Expelled college students of Reddit. Why are you expelled? I had a particularly rough semester, and got a D in a class that I had previously dropped after about a week, because my schedule the prior semester was too busy then. Department rules say that you can't attempt a class for credit more than twice, including drops, so I got kicked out of my major. I was 14 hours away from graduation at the time. The academic advisor said I could change my major, so basically start college all over again, or screw off for a year and then come back on probation. So I guess I'm not expelled per se, but I'm taking an involuntary gap year. Story 2. My roommate got expelled for basically never going to class, not even when there was an important exam. He spent all night smoking weed with me and playing video games, not with me, then slept all day until about 5 p.m. Like, I would wake up, go to my 8:30 lecture, get lunch, go to lab 2 to 5, and then come back to my room, and my roommate was still sleeping. I found out the following summer he had gotten a letter from the university asking him to not come back. Last I heard of him, he had enrolled at a commuter school, where he made the dean's list. Story 3. Currently I'm aware of a group of international students getting expelled from my school. They've been whispering to each other during exams in another language, and as luck would have it, my professor happens to speak that language, and has slowly been building a case against them without their knowing it. The kids somehow also got the solutions to every homework and exam last semester, which is very similar to what we've been assigned this semester. However, the kids are so frickin' lazy, they blindly copy whole solutions not realizing numbers are different, sometimes units are metric, and they answer in English. And one problem asked for something completely different than they solved for using the exact procedure to solve last semester's homework. They're absolutely screwed, and I'm kind of excited to see it. One of them had a 3.75 GPA and was on the verge of being auto-admitted into our MS/BS program. He's probably been cheating his whole college career. We are 2 semesters away from graduation. Plot twist. The advisor to that program is the instructor that is currently building the case against them. So basically that guy is mega screwed. Professor is a savage. He's been grading all their homework and exams like everything was fine, and one day unleashed a dossier of absolute justice to COAM, the Committee on Academic Misconduct. That's what COAM stands for. I looked it up for you. I had no clue. Maybe it's a regional thing because I'm in Canada or something, but I've never heard it in my life. But hey, fair enough. If these guys are going to cheat so hard in university, they've got to face the consequences. And the consequences in university are pretty severe. Story 4. I was making a search engine for our school teacher evaluation page. It absolutely blew up in popularity, and a large portion of the school was using it, about 5,000 views per day. Essentially, it was like Rate My Professor, except it used the evals that they force students to do at the end of the class as data. I also added features that made it more desirable to students. It became so popular that it was showing up on the front page of Google for certain teacher names. Some of those teachers had low ratings and got upset. I had unintentionally violated IP laws because the evaluations were under password protections and my site was not. The only reason I didn't get expelled was because the dean of my department had my back. He did research and concluded the information shouldn't have been private in the first place, then sent a public information request to make it so my project did not break the law. I definitely had people asking for my expulsion for a scary amount of time. Story 5. I was expelled back in my 4th year of college. I've dealt with social anxiety since childhood, and it came to a head in my 3rd year when I was having panic attacks frequently. I got help, but by then it was too late for my grades because I'd been barely passing classes by the skin of my teeth. I was a 4th year comp sci major who didn't know how to program at all. I tried to get back on the horse after going through therapy for my anxiety, but I felt so defeated that my grades slipped further into the hole I had dug for myself. I think the quarter I got kicked out I had 2 Fs, 2 Ds, and a C. The dean sent me a letter saying I was done with engineering. I took time to get my act together, got a part-time job, lived in a crap-hole apartment with 7 people living in a space meant for 4 at the absolute max. I worked minimum wage and realized I needed to finish school. I saw my undergrad counselor numerous times, who very graciously helped me. I needed to write out a contract addressed to the dean with my detailed plan on how I was going to prove I was worthy of being readmitted, and the classes I would take to qualify for graduation. It took a while, but I eventually managed to get readmitted by working my butt off. I took summer school courses which counted towards my major, and getting a 3.0 average, then following up by getting good grades once they let me back in. It was tough because I needed therapy for so many years, but I didn't want to accept it until my breakdown in 3rd year. I wish I'd gotten help sooner, but I truly thought I could handle it all on my own, and I felt ashamed that I wasn't able to. But I'll say this. I don't regret for a second that I ended up getting help. I was a little embarrassed about it at first, but I soon got over that. I still have some days where anxiety is in the back of my mind, but I'm a lot better now. And I graduated. If you're struggling in school, just know that even if you get kicked out, it doesn't mean it's the end for you, if you do honestly want to finish. Story 6. I spent too much time drinking and not going to class. I was a junior with a 1.6 overall GPA. University said they didn't need my ilk around there and would open my spot for someone who'd appreciate it. This got my attention. I went to the dean and talked with him for a couple of hours trying to get back in. He said no. 19 out of 20 of you guys go back to doing the same thing. I told him I would be the exception. He gave me another chance. From then on, it was 4.0 every semester. I finally got my GPA up over 2.5 so I could graduate. I made sure and went back to the dean's office to thank him and tell him that I was 1 out of 20 that made it. Story 7. Expelled because my GPA dropped below the competitive level for the engineering school at my college. I was given the option of transferring to a different school. They recommended I go into the humanities or be expelled. Well, thankfully, I had a job from the previous summer that was willing to hire me on full-time before this happened. So I took the expulsion and went to work full-time. Since then, I've got my certifications and work in the trades doing fairly well for myself, so yay? Edit. A lot of people have asked similar questions. I'll answer them here. I left with a 2.9 GPA. I needed to maintain a 3.25 in order to stay in the program I was in, as it was also providing a scholarship. Couldn't afford school without it. I went into HVAC in the trades with an emphasis on programming. If people are genuinely curious, I highly recommend looking into the trades. Some people just aren't meant for university. I'm not saying they're not smart. For instance, I graduated high school valedictorian with a 4.45 GPA, but some brains just aren't set up to be learning in a desk for 4+ years. There's a stigma that it's a lower class job, but don't let that stop you. I paid off the student debt that I had within a year and a half of working, and at 23, am looking to purchase my first house. The trades, assuming you get technical training or go into a highly sought-after trade, pay extremely well. I make a little over $48K a year after being in the trades for a little over 3 years, and that's still as an apprentice. Also, not bashing the humanities one bit. My brother went that route, and he's one of the most intelligent people I know. I just have a mechanically inclined mind, and it would have been wasted going in that direction. Hell yeah, OP. I have nothing but respect for tradespeople because I know that my butt could not do it. I'm kind of like the opposite. The trades just do not mesh with how I live and operate. And hey, someone's got to do the jobs. And for those people, thank you. Story 8. Was expelled the first time I went to college back in the 90s. I remember on orientation day we walked by the fraternities and my dad got all excited. Walked up to the Phi Kappa Taus. They were pretty cool, acted all interested in me. I didn't look around anywhere else. Hell, I was 17 and very intimidated. I rushed them, and turns out, they were massive party animals. I lived and worked 40 minutes away from school and had a girlfriend back home. So far, right? So I scheduled all my classes at 7 to 11 a.m. It was hard to get up at 5 and drive into school and pay attention in a 1,000-seat lecture hall. So I started to stay at the frat house and blow off my classes. The first semester, I got a 0.0. The next, I got a 0.33. 1D. I wasn't the only one expelled from school that year. Me and 4 other guys were competing for the lowest GPA. What a frickin' waste. It's stupid that college is wasted on the young. I went back in my 30s and got my degrees, but I wasted a tremendous amount of time working crappy jobs for crappy people. Story 9. I was expelled 3 years ago from a small private liberal arts university 2 weeks before I was supposed to graduate. I was in an upper-level algorithms course for my computer science major, and instead of a final, the professor assigned a large research project on an extremely niche area of study. I had other classes to worry about finishing as well, so admittedly I didn't prioritize the paper as much as I should have. 3 weeks before it was due, the professor required us to submit a rough draft so he could critique and help us. My topic was so niche, I was only able to find 1 text on it, but it was a really good source with a very long mathematical proof, like 3 pages worth. So obviously I was going to cite this proof as the fulcrum for my paper. There was no way I could do that sort of math on my own. I could only find a physical copy of this source from the library. There was no digital copy. So in order to use and cite it in my paper, I would have to transcribe 3 pages of mathematical proof by typing it in. That sounds easy enough. But the thing with mathematical papers is they use a lot of symbols. It's how the math is demonstrated. I used a language called LaTeX, which allows you to input things and make everything look nice. But it's time-consuming. This took me nearly 4 hours, but I finally had a digital copy of my proof. I didn't have time to write anything more than an abstract for my rough draft, and I cited my source in the works cited section. So I turned this into my professor as if to say, I don't have much, but this proof was hard to acquire, and I will be basing my paper around it. He calls me in the next day to inform me he has reported me to the Academic Affairs Council for plagiarism. I'm dumbfounded. I explained my reasoning for what I turned in and how I had no intention of plagiarizing work I had clearly cited, on a rough draft, no less. To which his response was, "That is for the council to decide." So I appear before the council, trying to explain everything in layman's terms. How I had no idea it's even possible to be found guilty of plagiarism for an incomplete work, and how I would never try to steal intellectual work 2 weeks before I'm supposed to graduate, and how if I'd known this was possible, I would have turned in nothing, but they're having none of it. I will never forget how they asked me why I didn't just photocopy the textbook and submit that. Given that I had a derogatory mark on my record from my sophomore year when I stupidly cheated off my friend's test, they found grounds to immediately remove me from campus. As in, they told me I had 6 hours to pack my things, or they would call the police and I would be found guilty of trespassing. I cried as I had to quickly pack my things and move back in with my parents who were beside themselves. I later saw a rumor on the campus yik-yak that I'd been expelled for assaulting someone, which really drove the dagger into my heart. My girlfriend left me later that week and the silence I received from my friends was deafening. I had been deeply involved in the campus community, at one point serving as the vice president of the student body, as well as serving on the committee that selected the new university president and many other groups on campus. I was one of 3 students who spoke at the graduation ceremony, and I was to carry our class banner as we entered the ceremony. Thankfully, my story has a happy ending so far. By the time my classmates were crossing the stage, I had already found a job and was gainfully employed. Where I had been myopic about my future after college, I now suddenly had a fire to regain what was taken from me. I'm on track to finish my bachelor's this year, while also working at a Fortune 500. I've never shared this story with anyone who doesn't know me closely, and I'm hesitant to speak to a professional counselor about my struggles with this and an abusive ex-girlfriend. Perhaps that's something I should do. I hope someday I'm able to prove that you can lose everything and still persevere and rebuild. Every year on April 25th, the day that they expelled me, I take myself out to a nice restaurant, promising not to let something like that happen again. I'm caught just as off guard as OP is that you can be flagged for plagiarism on an incomplete work. That doesn't make any damn sense to me. Surely that's the stage where the professor is like, "Hey, you're using too much of this work. Don't do that." Not, "That's it, you're going to academic jail." Like, this just seems not how things are done. I think OP got kinda shafted here to say the least. Story 10. Called the professor who is several years younger than me a little craphead while in class, for cracking a joke about why I was coming back to college after so long. I was in the military serving in Afghanistan, but I won the appeal. Edit. To give a little backstory to the situation, we were assigned to a group project, of which I was older than everyone by nearly 10 years. We got to a part where we were discussing technology, and the kids in my group were snickering about how I didn't have a cell phone until my senior year of high school, and describing the old Nokias. It wasn't good fun, and I was actually enjoying acting like an old-timer. I was around 30. The professor heard the laughing and came to see what it was all about. One of the girls repeated the conversation, and he made a comment along the lines of, "I guess he joined the military because he couldn't make it into college the first time around." Now, mind you, I was in college before I went into the military. I left for real reasons. I come from a very poor town, and had no parents to pay for my college. I knew that if I joined and did my 4 years, I would get my GI Bill, which would prevent me from going into massive student loan debt. This was also not long after 9/11, so I was feeling very patriotic and wanted to serve my country. Of course, after I got out, I went straight to work in another career field, and it took some time for me to go back to school. Story 11. I unintentionally got another student expelled. We were critiquing websites we had built, when I noticed that one looked exactly like mine with a few tweaks. I popped open the source and noticed it was a line-for-line copy of my code with a few changes to the CSS. I brought it up to the professor to protect myself in case he noticed them, though I doubt I would have been suspected. Mine was more cohesive. The changes he did make didn't make the site appealing. Anyway, apparently it was his 3rd time plagiarizing. After twice you go on trial with the school. If you don't get expelled then, a 3rd time is a nail in the coffin. Story 12. Failing grades, insane roommates, and theft accusations. I bombed out due to massive stress, appealed, and got back in. I was going to the Art Institute of Philadelphia, one of the few places I legitimately consider hell on earth. The school paired me up with various roommates who had severe issues, refusing to shower for 6 months, hardcore drug addicts, a guy who openly pleasured himself to pictures of dead bodies while I was still in the room. Anyway, nightmare fuel. The entire dorm was terrible. People were constantly kicking or punching body-sized holes into and through walls. Elevators would drop multiple floors when you were in them. Basically just a nightmare. And then one winter, a fire alarm started going off every single night around 2 a.m. We would have to evacuate the building into the dead of winter. Nothing quite wakes you up like fire alarms and freezing cold. Mentally, I started to lose it. My grades dropped and I failed the semester because I couldn't sleep. Between the fire alarms and overwhelming funk, I was getting extremely worn down and stressed. This continued on. One of the deans calls me in one day and accuses me of credit card theft. According to the school, I had stolen a credit card from one of my roommates, racking up a massive bill, and apparently they had proof. It was at Lane Bryant, which I didn't know at the time was a women's clothing store that specializes in plus-sized apparel. It was implied I was buying these for my girlfriend, but I had to point out to the school, hey, I'm gay. They changed their story to the fact I must have been buying them for myself, implying I was a cross-dresser. Yeah, I kind of lost my stuff. I asked them to provide any shred of proof to back up their claims. Obviously, they had none, but proceeded to harass me about this stuff for weeks, demanding I pay back the money I never took, or they would have to escalate things. Then I ended up with a roommate who was caught growing drugs, shrooms, in my closet. He got caught, but the school decided that chaperoning that guy was not their responsibility, and he ended up stealing half of my stuff. To which the school was like, "Did you have insurance? No? Not our problem. Get out of my office." After that, everything tanked. The stress piled on, and the plurality of crappiness that exuded from the school got to me, and I failed out. As I said, I was able to appeal, get back in, and later graduate. Story 13. Was expelled my second semester at a northern U.S. school, think Michigan, Montana, North Dakota. It was my second semester being an older transfer student from the mid-Atlantic. I ended up slipping on ice and fracturing my femur, my humerus, and 2 fingers on ice outside my apartment. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital during that time recovering and doing PT. Finally got home. My apartment was 30 minutes away from campus, since I couldn't drive, nor did they have cabs. Well, they did, I just couldn't afford them. Ended up failing everything and having to move back home. Only a year later, I find out about an office that can help you out with getting tuition back and expunging your record of classes due to medical issues. Had to wait a year to get back in. This year, I'm finding myself in the same situation with aplastic anemia, but I only got diagnosed 1 week before my insurance expired. I'm 16 credits from graduation, and I'm stuck with the bureaucratic process of trying to take classes over the summer. It'll probably take me to mid-July, which means I have to come back in the fall to finish up. I'm about ready to give up. Story 14. Not me, but a guy who lived on the floor below me my freshman year. Dude was already a nuisance. He got drunk and wandered into town one night. Broke a window in a private residence because he thought it was our dorm. Got arrested for breaking said window. When the school found out, they told him that if you got into any trouble either with the police or the school's internal justice system, which is actually decent by the way, it's student run, then he would be thrown out. Same goes for getting transported to the local hospital due to excessive drunkenness. Cut to Halloween night, when his roommate found him passed out covered in vomit on the floor of his dorm room. He tested positive for alcohol, marijuana, and coke. I'm pretty sure he was kicked out before he got out of the hospital. Story 15. A guy on my floor in the dorms got expelled within the first night of move-in day. Since it was the first night away from parents and we were all new to college, there was a crap ton of pop-up parties around the university. Apparently this kid did weed, shrooms, and acid all in one night, then came back near his dorm building and started heavily drinking. His roommate found him and brought him back to the dorm room. The kid proceeded to go on a very bad trip before vomiting everywhere and passing out. He apparently OD'd hard. 911 was obviously called and the police showed up and saw the sheer amount of drugs, I think it was weed and shrooms, that this kid had hidden in his dorm, along with beer and even a pocket knife. That's illegal on campus. He was taken to detox and was heavily charged since he was a minor and all. He was expelled before he even left a detox apparently. His parents came and picked up his stuff. I don't know if he was banned from campus too or if he was just embarrassed. He became a legend on our floor. Edit. All knives are illegal while living in dorms. I think you can have a butter knife, but that's it. So the pocket knife was a no-no. Also, I'm not entirely sure what he OD'd on since I wasn't there and only heard this through his roommate. His roommate thought he OD'd on the combination of it all, though yeah, it may have just been the heavy drinking. From what I know about that combination of drugs and stuff, ODing is unlikely. Probably just, bad reactions from mixing it all and then drinking heavily, but not what I would classify as an OD, I don't think. Anyway, that's besides the point. The point is, kid went way too frickin' hard, man. The first night of move-in day, he didn't even want to ease into it or anything. He dove right in. And I'm not even talking he dove into the deep end or whatever. He dove into the ocean with sharks below and piranhas, and piranhas aren't going to be in the ocean, are they? I'm getting caught up in the logistics of it. Basically, he jumped in and died immediately. Story 16. Oh, here we go. So I attended BYU from 2006 to 2009. For those who do not know, BYU is an incredibly religious school with some pretty insane rules. One of those is the honor code. It's made the news recently, so I won't go into detail about what it entails, but here's the gist of it. Anything that you think is fun about college, don't do it. Anyway, I was starting my senior year and we had a party. I was one of those party kids that had a place in Salt Lake that we would go up to and get crazy for a weekend and then go and pretend it never happened. Party was great, the guy-to-girl ratio was awesome, and then people started pairing off. One girl ended up drunk texting her roommates, classic drunk girl stuff. And before I knew it, I had missed 13 calls from the ecclesiastical leader. Whatever, we all knew at one point this was gonna happen. Monday rolls around and I get dragged out of class like we're in high school all over again. I was escorted to the honor code office, I kid you not. There is an entire office at BYU that is solely dedicated to enforcing the no drinking, no banging, no cheating, and to make sure you go to church. I sit down in the office knowing full well what's gonna happen. The guy asks me who was at the party, which I thought was odd. Apparently the girl that was texting could only remember my name in the whole fiasco, and I was the only one that was called in. I was given the option to tell the school who was involved in the party and stay in school, or not tell them and be kicked out. Now, this enraged me at the time. A religion that focuses solely on Christ, choices, and repentance wants me to force others to confess? I tore into the honor code cop, letting off an exquisite string of screw yous and screw this at close to the top of my lungs. After that, I was escorted off campus, told to pack my things and leave. Worked out pretty well in the end, though. Story 17. Did very well in high school. 4.8 GPA, 4 years JROTC, 100+ hours of community service, played football for 2 years, played hockey the last 2, and was named team captain for my senior season of hockey. Earned a 3-year Army ROTC scholarship, and my mom died unexpectedly the 5th week of my freshman year. Got back to school after being home for 2.5 weeks, and none of my professors gave a crap. Failed every class except ROTC and French. Got a D, but hey, D's get degrees, right? And during my academic hearing after the first semester, they literally laughed at me when I told them the reason. After I wasn't able to raise my GPA to a 2.0 after the second semester, which was my fault, lacked a will to be there and was pretty depressed, I was expelled. Lost my scholarship, and couldn't talk to my mom about it. Screw private colleges, man. Wasted $20,000+ there. OP, you can't put that on yourself. To say, oh, it was your fault that you couldn't raise your GPA. Not really. There were extenuating circumstances, my man. I have no doubt you did your best. And that doesn't make it your fault. That's a hard time of your life for all that to be going on. And if it's any consolation, I hope things worked out for you, man. Story 18. I wasn't expelled, but when I was an RA, I got someone expelled. It's worth noting that this kid was already on probation for constantly throwing parties in his dorm room. Lost his ROTC scholarship in the first 3 weeks, later kicked out of ROTC the week after, and had been caught twice in the same week for throwing parties after being told he was on suspension 2. Suspension 2 at my university is where you're soft suspended, basically meaning you're allowed on campus and in the dorms during the weekdays, but must return home on weekends. It was likely that this was his time to go, but we had no idea that he was actually going to find time between then and his discipline hearing to cause an actually unique problem. One that we wouldn't have been aware of without a conveniently timed avocado allergy. It was a normal weeknight, and I was on the 9th floor of my building hanging out with a friend. I get a panicked text from one of my residents because her roommate has been developing a rash over the course of the day, and it's spreading from her hip all the way up to her chest. And they're both worried about what will happen when it gets to her neck. Never fear, the RA is here. I ran down the 3 flights of stairs to help the possibly overdramatic theater majors, but on the way I slip. What do I slip in on a Monday night? That's right, mostly dried puke. And I'm in tights and don't really have that much time to change. So I quickly get to the girls and tell them to grab coats after checking out the rash and agree it's better to be safe than sorry, and we head to the ER. I tell them I need to grab my coat and quickly peel off my tights, trying to not think about what I stepped in. We go through her admitting papers to try and see if there was anything out of the ordinary she interacted with. Food, place, sick person. No food, no weird places, but oh, there was that dude who just showed up in our room and started puking on everything and then took his pants off. I'm sorry, what? That Saturday, the girl with the rash was out late. She was with her parents to celebrate her brother's birthday. Her roommate had left the door unlocked since she'd gotten texts saying she'd forgotten her keys and wouldn't be back until after 1 a.m. At around 12:30, she hears the door open. Assumes the roommate is home early. Not long after, roommate does get home. Texting girl on top bunk because someone's in her bed already. Top bunk now believes she's in a low-budget horror movie and starts screaming her head off. This only angers and confuses her bunkmate. Intruder sits up quickly and slams his head on the bed above him, rolls over and promptly craps himself. The roommate outside hears the screaming and thuds and rushes into the room to figure out what the hell is going on. They both try to get this random dude out of their room, and he is not having it because that is my room. Imagine Elle Woods and Queen of the Sugar Plum Fairies became interior decorators. This is the dorm room they would have designed. It was not his room at all. They argue with him for a few more seconds and he ignores them, going to the bathroom where they both hear him puke all over the sink, toilet, and shower curtain. Drunk Wonder Boy then comes back out to the room, peels off his pants but not his underwear, and lays down on the futon with his butt facing up, so blessedly, no poop stains on their bright pink futon. I'm not sure how they did it, but they get him to wake up and tell him to go back to his room, and he sort of just agrees this time. Tells them his room number, and off to the stairwell he goes. I asked for the guy's room number not to get him in trouble, but because his RA might want to have a conversation about safe drinking and making sure your friends are always with you. And of course, it's Problem Child's room number. And of course, it's only one floor above us. So it means I got a preview of this story on my way down, and it's currently sitting in my dirty clothes hamper. We get the girl admitted because the nurse is actually worried about the rash, and anything she might have been exposed to after we give the Sparks Notes version of the last few paragraphs. God knows what was festering in this guy, and they were too embarrassed / never thought anyone would believe them to ask for help for cleaning their bathroom. We wait for a few allergy tests to be done, and I excuse myself to make a call to his RA. The tests would later reveal she developed an avocado allergy that had not previously presented itself and would be totally fine. Hey, RA, have you heard from the resident about something from the weekend? Christ, what now? He sort of drunkenly went into some of my residents' rooms, crawled into a bed, crapped himself, puked everywhere, and then took off his pants. I frickin' hate my floor. End of conversation. He was moving out of the dorm by Friday. In that time span, I got to have a real fun FaceTime conversation with his mom about how I ruined his life. Oh, she was a real peach. You know, hearing the mom acts poorly too doesn't surprise me. These sorts of irresponsible and, self-centered behaviors usually come from somewhere. Anyway, OP, that's a disgusting thing to slip in and an unfortunate story. Definitely sounds like that guy needs to sort his stuff out before living in a dorm or going to college or anything. Just bigger fish to fry, you know? Story 19. Oh man. Some dude was creeping around trying to get into the women's rooms in the dorms. Every guy, including myself, that matched the description was pulled aside and questioned. They decided it was me. My roommate vouched for me, and I offered to keep a webcam or something to that effect in my dorm on loop to prove my whereabouts. Like I'm gonna be up at 5 a.m. doing stuff. They weren't interested in proving my innocence, that much was clear. After continued BS, including them waking me up early as hell accusing me of skulking around minutes earlier, as if I were faking my morning stupor and my roommate was lying to cover me being a frickin' creeper, finally they smelled the devil's plant in my dorm. They asked permission to search and I refused. They asked repeatedly and I refused repeatedly. Finally they decided they could just lie in their report and say I gave permission anyway, and away they went. They found my weed, some shrooms I'd had for a few months, and a lock-picking kit buried in my drawer that my friend had given me for my birthday sometime earlier. Jackpot. Clearly I was sneaking around and picking locks on doors in a massively populated dorm with people in the rooms, all with the goal to assault and murder women within earshot of 100 other people. Yeah, frickin' brilliant. Got some felony charges for possession of drugs and the lockpicks. Seriously? A felony, California? And I spent the night in jail. Wasn't allowed to go back. But screw that. I went straight there anyway and slept for the rest of the day because I was tired as hell, and then I was expelled. Now for the kicker. I reapplied as a former student. They had some special provisions for that, and because my grades were fine, they let me back in. Graduated that place with my bachelor's in physics, minoring in math. Best revenge I could have possibly hoped for. Screw you, Campus PD, you incompetent idiots. The lockpicks are a felony? The drugs, yeah, I knew. I don't necessarily agree personally, but I'm not gonna get into that here. But the lockpicks? I thought you could just have those as a hobby thing. I guess when you get down to it, drugs are also a hobby thing, but you know what I mean. Anyway, OP, that sounds absolutely exhausting. Being falsely accused for anything makes me absolutely livid. I can only imagine getting kicked out of university for it. Congrats on truly the best revenge you can get, though. Success. Anyway, that is all the stories we have for today. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.